Ho, ho, ho! Welcome back to Supernatural Secrets, where we uncover the mysteries and chills hidden behind the world you think you know. I'm Santa, or at least, tonight I am. Christmas is supposed to be a time of joy and celebration, but not all holiday tales end with merry laughter. Some stories are much darker, filled with terror and unease, enough to make even the jolliest shiver. So, settle in, my little elves, and listen closely. These are real Christmas horror stories that have haunted homes and hearts during the most wonderful time of the year. Be careful, or you might just end up on my naughty list. Ho, ho, ho. Ah, Christmas at Bramsill House. What a festive and joyous occasion it must have been. The halls were adorned with mistletoe, and the grand estate buzzed with excitement for the wedding of Lord Lovell and his beautiful young bride. The air was crisp, the fire crackled, and the guests were merry, as was the custom in those days. But tradition often brings with it games, and this night was no exception. Inspired by the mistletoe hanging all around, someone suggested a playful hunt. The bride would hide somewhere in the grand house, and the wedding party would search for her. The prize? A kiss for whoever found her first. Laughter erupted as the bride lifted the hem of her gown and darted off into the shadows of the mansion. Minutes passed, then an hour. At first, the guests thought she was clever, hiding in some forgotten nook. But as time wore on, concern began to creep in. They checked every room, every hallway, every corner of the sprawling estate. Yet no sign of her could be found. The joyous laughter turned to uneasy whispers, and then to dreadful silence. The bride had vanished. The search didn't end that night, or even that week. Days turned to years, and the mystery of her disappearance haunted Bramsill House. Lord Lovell, consumed with grief and guilt, never stopped looking for his beloved, even as the years carved lines of sorrow on his face. It wasn't until 50 long years later that the truth was uncovered. Wandering through the aging mansion, Lord Lovell stumbled upon a small, hidden closet in an upstairs room, a space long forgotten. Inside, he discovered an old wooden chest, sealed tight with a rusted lock. His heart pounded as he forced it open, and there, within the dusty confines, lay his bride's remains. She had chosen the chest as her hiding spot that night, likely unaware that the heavy lid would seal shut behind her. Alone in the darkness, her cries for help must have been muffled by the thick walls of the grand house. The once beautiful bride, her dress now yellowed with time, had been trapped for half a century. To this day, the halls of Bramsill House are said to echo with her sorrow. So, be careful when you celebrate this holiday season. Not every game ends with laughter, and not every love story finds its happy ending. Well now, settle in, little ones. Let me tell you another story. One that doesn't come with sugar plums and jolly jingles. No, no. This one's for the curious minds, the ones who like a little frost and shadow in their Christmas tales. It's about a man named Professor Parkins and a Christmas he'd rather have forgotten. Parkins was a peculiar man, bookish, sharp as a frosty icicle, and about as warm as one, too. He wasn't much for Christmas cheer. No tinsel, no carols, no family gatherings for him. Instead, he decided to spend his holiday in a quiet seaside town. He told himself he'd enjoy the solitude, read a few books, and walk by the ocean. But oh, he didn't know what the sea had in store for him. It was on one of those quiet, cold afternoons that it all began. The beach stretched out before him, gray and windswept, with dunes rising like small snowy hills. As he walked, his eyes caught something glinting faintly in the sand. Now, Parkins wasn't one to ignore a mystery. He knelt down and brushed it clean, revealing an old, weathered whistle. The whistle was oddly made, tarnished and ancient, with Latin words carved along its side. "Vi sediste qui venite." For those of you who've skipped your Latin lessons, that means, who is this who is coming? Strange words, don't you think? But Parkins, being the logical man he was, dismissed it as some oddity of the past. He pocketed it, went back to his room at the inn. Later that evening, when the fire was crackling and the Christmas lights outside flickered in the stormy wind, he took out the whistle to examine it. Turning it over in his hands, he thought to himself, why not, and gave it a quick blow. The sound that came out wasn't what he was expecting. It wasn't cheerful or sharp like the whistle of a train or any whistle he'd heard before. No, it was hollow, like a distant wail, low and mournful, and it lingered in the air longer than it should have. Parkins frowned. The sound really disturbed him, but he set it aside, convincing himself it was nothing more than an odd trick of sound from an old malfunctioning whistle. He then quickly washed up and went to bed, though his heart felt heavier than before. That night, a dream came. He was back on the dunes, alone, the wind whipping around him. At first it was peaceful, just the sound of the waves rolling in and the crunch of his boots on the sand. But then he saw it. Far in the distance, a figure, no more than a shadow, moving toward him. Slowly, deliberately, the figure was faceless, shapeless, but it sent a chill down his spine. He couldn't move, couldn't run. The figure stretched out an arm, long and bony, as if to reach for him. Parkins woke with a start. The image burned into his mind. His room was cold, much colder than it should have been, and the air felt heavy. He tried to shake it off. "It's just a dream," he muttered to himself, though the unease lingered like a shadow at the edge of his thoughts. The next morning, he woke up feeling weird. Being a man of logic, he was annoyed that he allowed the dream to bother him that much. To clear his mind, he went for a walk along the beach again. He thought the fresh air would help. As he walked, a strange feeling washed over him, a sense of déjà vu. The way the dunes curved, the way the waves crashed. It was all so familiar. And then it struck him. This was his dream. Everything was exactly as how it was. The dunes, the ocean, everything down to the birds flying over him. They mimicked his dreams exactly. He stopped in his tracks, looking around, trying to process the extreme familiarity. He told himself he was imagining things and that it's just a series of coincidences. But then he remembered something. He realized that it was in this part of his dream that he saw the figure. Curiosity got the best of him, and he started looking around. As he turned his head back, he saw it. Far in the distance, at the edge of the dunes, a figure just like in the dream. It wasn't moving, not yet, but it was there. Parkins stood frozen, his breath catching in his throat. Then, as if sensing his gaze, the figure began to move. Slow, deliberate, and unnatural, like it was being dragged toward him. He didn't stay to watch. Heart pounding, he turned and ran, the sound of the waves crashing behind him like a warning. When he reached the safety of the inn, he quickly gored the whistle and threw it into the fire and watched it glow red hot before turning to ash. He knew it wasn't logical or didn't make any sense in the slightest, but he didn't care. That night, the professor settled into bed, hoping the worst was behind him. The whistle was gone, reduced to ash, and with it, he believed the strange happenings would cease. He closed his eyes and let sleep take him, clinging to the fragile hope of peace. But in the early hours, as the inn lay silent, he stirred awake. At first he thought it was nothing, a dream perhaps. But then he heard it. A faint wail, so distant it could almost be the wind. Yet, he recognized it instantly. 'Twas the sound of the whistle. It was faint, yes, but unmistakably there. The next morning, shaken and pale, he packed his belongings and left the coastal village without a word. His departure was abrupt, and he never returned. What became of him remains unclear. Those who knew him said he was never the same after that trip. Some whispered that he still heard the whistle, even in the bustling city streets, though he never spoke of it. Whatever haunted him, it seemed to follow, leaving an eerie question lingering in the minds of those he left behind. Was the whistle truly gone, or had its curse merely changed form? So, my friends, that is why I always say, not every gift is meant to be kept. So if you find something curious this Christmas, something strange, old, and out of place, well, maybe it's best to leave it where it lies. Gather round, friends, and let me tell you the last tale for the night. But not just any tale, mind you. This is one that lingers like the frost on a window pane. A story of Sandringham House, the grand and stately home of kings and queens. At Christmas, the house comes alive with warmth, laughter, and festive cheer. But there's another side to Sandringham, a darker side. The story goes that every Christmas Eve, as the world prepares to welcome the light and joy of the season, a shadow falls over Sandringham's servant quarters. It starts small, almost playfully. Doors creak open on their own, things randomly move or fall, as if unseen hands are wandering through the halls. The lights flicker, but not with the gentle hum of a loose bulb. No, it's sharper, deliberate, like someone testing how far they can go. Then come the footsteps, soft and measured, pacing down empty hallways. It's said you can hear them best when you're alone. One Christmas, many years ago, a young footman named Henry had just joined the staff. Eager to prove himself, he volunteered to tidy the corridors late at night. As the house settled into quiet and only the faint sounds of distant carolers drifted on the cold wind outside, Henry worked by lantern light. He was just straightening a garland when he noticed something unusual at the foot of the stairs. A sack, worn and frayed, sitting as though dropped in a hurry. Odd, he thought. The others had gone to bed, and no one had mentioned any deliveries. As Henry approached, his breath caught in his throat. The sack moved. Not much, just a slight, rhythmic heave. As though it were breathing. A raspy, wheezing sound filled the air, growing louder with each step he took. It was as if the sack itself had lungs, pulling in air. Henry didn't wait to find out more. He dropped his lantern and ran, the echo of his hurried footsteps joining the steady ones that had haunted the halls earlier. When he told the others the next morning, they didn't laugh or tease. Instead, their faces paled and they nodded. It was clear that they, too, had heard the footsteps, seen the doors open, and experienced the weirdness there. During Christmas, the whispers grew louder, heavy breathing from empty rooms, shadows flitting across doorways, and some even claimed to have seen a figure, tall and proud, standing in the dining hall late at night. Some say these strange happenings are tied to Sandringham's history, for both King George V and King George VI passed away in the house. Others believe the spirits belong to those who served the royals faithfully in life and never quite left. Whatever the truth, the servants agreed on one thing: they would never go into certain rooms alone, especially not during the Christmas season. And so, my friends, the tale of Sandringham House lives on. Even now, whispers of strange sounds and moving objects are passed down among the staff. Perhaps this Christmas Eve, as the clock strikes midnight, the breathing sack will reappear. Perhaps unseen footsteps will pace the halls once more. And perhaps, just perhaps, Sandringham will remind us that not all Christmas spirits bring joy and light. Well, my dear friends, that brings us to the end of our chilling Christmas tales. It seems even the season of joy and cheer has its share of mystery and wonder. So, as you hang your stockings and sip your cocoa, remember, Christmas is a time for stories, for magic, and maybe even a little mischief. So please remember to stay warm, stay merry, and keep your eyes open for the unexpected. From me and all my helpers, Merry Christmas to all, and to all a good fright, night. Until next time, stay vigilant, stay curious, and may the mysteries of the supernatural continue to captivate your imagination. This is Supernatural Secrets signing off.